In the graph of f of x and g of x as shown, sketch f minus g of x on the same grid, plot at least 4 points. Okay, so to do this, we know that f minus g of x is equivalent to f of x minus g of x, and you can only combine two functions as long as the x values are consistent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out some points on f of x and some points on g of x. They want at least 4 points. Let's start with g of x first. Okay, so in my g of x function, I'm just going to figure out a few points here. So we have -2 and 0, right? Whatever x values I choose for my g of x function, I'm going to also look at my f of x function. I can also see -1 and 1. Okay, 0 and 4, right? 0 and 4 here, and also 1 and 3. Okay, so the points are pretty easy to kind of interpret here, so it won't give us too much trouble. Let's take a look at f of x. Okay, so for our function f of x, we have -2 and 0 as well. We also have 1 and -1 and 1 as well. Oh, I think I made a mistake here. This one was -1 and 3. I think I looked at f of x instead. So for g of x, the equivalent point is -1 and 3, so it should have been this point. Okay. Anyways, continuing with f of x, we also have 0 and 2, and we also have 1 and 3. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to do f of x minus g of x. So you have to use the equivalent values. So in this case, if I do f minus g of -2, that's f of -2 minus g of -2, which is basically, so f of -2 is 0, g of -2 is also 0, which is 0, right? So the point here, and if I'm looking at my f minus g, I'm just going to do it here. If I'm looking at points, I have -2 and 0 as well. Okay. And I also do f minus g of -1. So you do the same thing, f of -1 minus g of -1, which is, so -1 for f is 1. -1 for g is 3. So you basically get -2, right? So the point here is -1 and -2. Then you do f of f minus g of 0, which is f of 0 minus g of 0, which is f of 0 here is 2. G of 0 is 4. So you get -2. So the point here is 0 and -2. And the last point, f minus g of 1. So f of 1 minus g of 1. F of 1 here is 3. G of 1 here is also 3. And you'll get 0. So you get 1 and 0. Okay. So these are the 4 points, and you can just kind of plot these 4 points to create your graph. So I'm going to just do that on this grid. So -2 and 0, so we're going to have a point here. I'm just going to do an orange. -1 and -2, it's going to be here. 0 and -2 is going to be here. And 1 and 0 is going to be there. Okay, so I'm just going to plot these points. Usually you wouldn't draw a line through them because sometimes the points in between might not be consistent. So I'm just going to plot the points here.